always feel responsible when I meet someone, especially refugees, who are in the most vulnerable situation probably they have ever been in their lives, and they have agreed to be exposed in front of a camera, which is quite a big decision. We tend to forget because we're working with cameras all the time. It's our daily routine. It's not their daily routine.
We needed to approach the whole situation in a different way, and we needed to think about it from their perspective, not from our own perspective.
I mean, I take comfort in doing this story, you know, and obviously if nobody has read it, then I haven't done my job. You know, I haven't made it interesting enough for people, and I've done a disservice to both my readers and to people who are, you know, that I'm writing about, and who don't have to talk to me and who gain nothing from talking to me.
Aylan Kurdi, the story of that boy, that one photo had perhaps more impact than 1,000 reports that people like us have been churning out, or videos. That gave a sort of spark of awakening or recognition in some people. So is it doing as much as we would like it to be doing? Absolutely not. But every now and then some lucky angle or some particularly horrible massacre gets documented that wakes people up for a few days or weeks.
It's one of the stories that really kind of touches your heart. It's a story of humanity, really. It's a shared story of humanity, of suffering that's chronic, that's elongated, that's as long as the length of the crisis. It's the story with the most human element to it, because on a day-to-day basis you can write about the geopolitical story, you can write about the big power politics that goes into the Syrian crisis, all the different players, all the people vying for influence, all the different armed groups and who's backing them. But this is a story of actual human beings. It's the real people whose lives have been touched and have been changed forever as a result of the crisis.
I feel that, you know, the minute you step into a refugee camp or any place where there are refugees, you've just walked into a place full of stories, full of incredible stories, you know, where you encounter a reality that is incredibly complex and that you really want to try to convey. At the same time, you are bound by so many different things in how much you can convey. It's unbelievable. First of all, time. You almost never have nearly enough time to understand the story yourself. That's the first hurdle. The second hurdle, say you understand 10% of what exactly is going on, of all the complexities, not just of the war they left, but of the situation they find themselves in the host community. Whatever you understand of that, you're faced with all the hurdles of broadcast, you know, the culture of broadcast news, 24/7 broadcast television, where you have to fit it all into a defined format.
ما الذي يدفع هذه الأعداد من اللاجئين السوريين إلى هذا التنقل المستمر من مكان إلى آخر؟ من المخيمات إلى المدن، من المدن إلى المخيمات، عبر البحار إلى أوروبا رغم خطر الغرق، وبرا إلى سوريا رغم الحرب.
I started covering the story in mid-2013 essentially when the refugee crisis was really reaching an apex in Lebanon itself. We've always tried to kind of find the personal touch to these stories, because you don't want to portray numbers to people reading about the refugee crisis. People's eyes glaze over if they just read about thousands of people who are displaced or thousands of lives have been changed, because it stops being a story of human beings and it becomes a story of numbers.
It began as a humanitarian story. Oh, you know, how terrible the situation is for these people, and slowly it became a security story. So now everyone, I feel, looks at the story as the refugees as a potential threat. You know, they're a fifth column perhaps, and this is obviously encouraged by politicians with ulterior motives and so on. But I feel the compassion has perhaps gone from the coverage side and also from the reader's side, perhaps. You know, don't forget that the readers fuel and shape the coverage is a sort of a circular process in some ways, and obviously we're seeing that in the Europe situation as well, unfortunately. I don't follow the Europe perhaps as closely as the regional stuff, especially Lebanese, but in both cases I feel there's no longer a sense that these are poor people who deserve aid and compassion. It's become, these are people trying to cheat us out of something and perhaps kill us in some sort of terror attack, which is obviously not true at all.
I think the way it touched the people the most is basically when we showed that it can happen to them as well. Because this is not some sort of an isolated case for people who did something wrong or are guilty and paying for what they did. It's basically helpless people, and they found themselves in this situation, and that it can happen to any of us. So at this point, we needed to show that to humanize the refugee. And to humanize it is basically to show that this is a universal character. It's someone like anyone else in the world who's watching it.
I did a story on winter storms in Lebanon and how it was affecting refugees. And we were trying to find a creative way to go about it instead of just going there for a couple of hours and writing about how cold it is and how people lack shelter. So I stayed with a family in one of their tents overnight, the night before a major winter storm, to write about their experience, and spending hours on end just talking to the children and running around with them, and lying down next to them when it's cold and the rain is pattering on the roof of the tent, and and seeing them in the morning as they try and find some firewood in order to light the fire and keep warm. It's a whole different experience when you actually sit down with the people and spend some time with them and get to know what they actually care about and what they worry about and what their fears are.
It's exploded in Europe now, and it's actually quite remarkable when I see stories. There was a piece in The Guardian a few weeks ago of a camp in Calais. We're talking 1 hour's drive from London, and it was a muddy, sodden field with tents, and it just looked exactly like something out of the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon. And the quotes the refugees were giving the journalists, it was the same exact things that we were hearing 3 and 4 years ago. It was absolutely surreal.
Lebanon has hosted refugees since the start of the crisis, and Turkey hosts 2 million refugees, and worldwide attention was really focused on it because it's gotten all the way to the doorsteps of the West.
Nowadays, you need to get something that's stronger, as if what those people have gone through is not strong enough. We need to search for what we call more crispy stories, which actually means more difficulties for those people.
I think you should keep your focus on understanding the reality you're facing and conveying that reality. And that's really a mental focus. I don't think when you get emotional you should, either hide or, exaggerate or try to put that emotion across. I think when interacting you should just be natural and, always focusing on trying to get the story out.
I don't think you can be a good journalist if you don't have empathy. You have to. I don't know if you have to necessarily identify with the people that you're interviewing, because I've never been a refugee, so I can't really know how it is. But I can empathize with their plight and I can try to understand it. And you only do that by spending a lot of time with them.
You obviously want to be as objective as you can and dispassionate and so on, but at the same time, these are people often in extremely distressing circumstances, and any human being is going to feel a degree of empathy. What you can't do is let that degrade the quality in any respect of what you're reporting. You can't invent facts or exaggerate what they're going through. You don't need to, frankly, in these situations. The facts speak for themselves. There's no need to inject any emotion or sentiment into them already. We
haven't been able to follow up properly on the story as we should.
People have this idea that it happens over there, it couldn't happen over here, now it's happening over here. We found out that over there is over here.